Good morning. So, today I'm gonna be making a little bit of a departure from what I usually speak about. This isn't going to have anything overtly to do with gender issues or that part of the journey in my life, though there might be elements that creep in. What I wanted to speak about today, due to some intensities of experiences that I've had in dream time and my meditations, and in conversations with others, I wanted to speak about synesthesia and spirit, and what I'm considering as a very vital part of our evolutionary process as a species. And I want to bring that down to a very, very human place. So let me introduce the subject this way. I have synesthesia. So someone who has synesthesia is referred to as a synesthete. And it manifests in different people in different ways. For me, I experience an overlap of color and sound. And I experience an overlap of taste sensations with color and sound. And I also have a tactile experience where certain sounds, spoken sounds, sung, music and singing, I experience them as tactile. There's a kind of touch sensation that goes with those sounds. And so, for those who've watched my videos before, you know that I have a pretty elaborate hand and finger language. That's why. I'm actually not just expressing sound, but also processing sound and imprinting it into my body through touch. I also experience the tactile overlap by being touched. So some particular kinds of surfaces and fabrics, and even human touch, generate either harmony or dissonance for me. They can be very positive or very negative experiences. When it's negative, it feels very abrasive, like sandpaper on the skin, or sometimes sharp, like a jabbing kind of pain, like a poke. So I'm very careful about the kinds of things that I cover my body with. I've learned which materials and fabrics I can wear easily and without any increased sense of friction. With the color and sound, I've been amazed when I've read and heard people's experiences with this, because the diversity of experience is so fascinating to me. With me, the color and sound overlaps like this, and it goes in both directions. So it's not that I only hear sound associated with color, so that certain colors I hear an internal sound associated with a certain color. I also will hear sound and see colors, and it's a moving field of color. It's not static, so it's not like, oh, this sound is red, or some variation of red, scarlet, rose. It's in motion, and it's actually very multi-dimensional, and it's like a little animation, a little moving hologram, which is fantastic because I'm a visual artist, among other things, and so I believe that helps feed the creative process for me. what it is that I experience through the synesthesia, especially with the sound and color. I don't always listen to music when I paint, but when I do, I pause and I listen very carefully for what kind of music wants to feed that inspirational process and that creative manifestation onto a canvas or a piece of paper. And so when I'm listening, I'm receiving information through the senses as well as through spirit and through the imagination. And those forces all come together to create whatever is going to show up on the canvas. It's a very rich, unbelievably rich experience. I feel completely blessed by that. There are times when it's not such a blessing because there is a tendency to feel overstimulated. And it doesn't help that I also have experienced attention deficit disorder since I was a child. Now, having said that, there are a couple different things that come to mind as I say that have been a part of my greater process. One is that synesthesia is considered to be categorized from a clinical point of view as on the autism spectrum. And many people who are synesthetes experience other kinds of symptoms like ADD or ADHD or Asperger's or some other kind of form of autism. Sometimes mild, sometimes very extreme. A lot of people who are synesthetes also experience OCD, the obsessive-compulsive disorder, to varying degrees. I have very, very, very mild OCD symptoms, and they've actually lessened to the degree where I don't really have symptomatic behaviors, with a slight tendency to be a little neurotic about clean surfaces, notwithstanding. I don't like clutter, I don't like piles, and if there are crumbs anywhere on any surface, they have to disappear. So that's my neurosis about. And what I feel is that the panic, the sort of anxiety that becomes fueled in there, it has to do with cleanliness and lack of complication in the mind. So a clean surface, a Zen space, means a clean mind and a Zen mind. That's how it translates to me. So busy, chaotic, cluttered sort of environments kind of poke at that a little bit, and they make me feel, historically, they certainly have made me feel more burdened and less functional. And it used to make me a really bad housemate, an intimate partner, because I used to go behind people and clean up. And I would probably also grumble about it along the way, like, take me to shit. So that was a little tangent there, but it's a good tangent because just like people who have to cope with these other sort of syndromes, ADD or OCD, or you come up with coping mechanisms to deal with however synesthesia presents in your life. So for me, I have learned to do a few things. I have learned to give myself lots of space and time in which to be quiet and in which to cultivate the clean Zen space within, and not make it such a demand that it has to be externalized and dependent on other people or my immediate environment. So the outer conditions, not so important anymore. The inner conditions are very important. And so every morning, if I can, there are other obligations that I have to take care of. I have to get up, I have to get my daughter ready for school, But every morning I try as best as I can to be a little bit selfish, to make time and space for myself in which to be still and quiet. And I meditate and I listen to music. Very important. Music is very important. I can't even imagine beginning my day without music. Coffee, very important part of the ritual. But most of all, the stillness and the quiet. So that I'm buffering my senses. And really, hearing is most important in that. I'm light sensitive, and that partly has to do with being blue-eyed, but it also has to do with the synesthesia. I can feel overloaded and overcome by too much sensory input at once, especially if I don't feel like I've really emerged properly in the morning, allowing myself a slow emergence into and through the senses. So that's what I give myself. And then as far as my other greater practice of spiritual discipline goes, the meditation is key because it allows me to set an intention for the day, to presence in a certain way, to be as present and as conscious as possible. So those are some of my tools. In livingness, in the day-to-day livingness of things, there are days when I have to limit my exposure to the outside world and to other people. And if possible, if those are days where I don't have other obligations, that's perfect because I can do one of a few things. I can either stay indoors and work creatively. I might make a video, I might paint, I might meditate some more. It might be a day where it's better to have verbal communication with people or written communication with people, so to chat online or connect through Facebook or something. It might be a day for me to simply take myself out of doors and go into nature, which is really the very best meditation and the very best medicine and the very best coping mechanism. And even if there are people around, I don't really register them if I'm in that energy where I need to incubate and kind of cocoon, because it's like that container comes with me in my intention. And so I find I have these little places, even within the city, where I can go and be in nature. A little patch of woods or go down by the lake, and that allows me the opportunity to recalibrate and kind of reset, like press the reset button. And then I'm able to integrate enough to come back into the fray, so to speak, with other people. And then all of that overlap might be a little trippy, but it's not overwhelming. It's not chaos. So that being said, I want to mention this sort of psychological and emotional impact of having synesthesia. And this is not by any means true of everybody, or even most people who have synesthesia, or a similar set of syndromes. I prefer to say ways of experiencing the world and ways of being in the world, because the clinical language is good for clarity and understanding, but it's cold and it's impersonal, and it doesn't take into account that there might be a greater purpose for what it is that we experience and why it is that we experience things the way that we do. So emotionally, the huge blessing of being a synesthete is that there is greater capacity, in my experience, for bliss. And I mean that word the way Joseph Campbell would use that word, your bliss, like the ecstatic experience of being alive and the fullness of life itself. It is an amazingly ecstatic thing to be so open to a language of our humanity and a language of nature and a language of a living relationship that is, it's energetic, and it's like very meta, very hyper real. It's like here's the reality that we all experience. It's the stuff we can touch. It's the stuff we see with our eyes. It's the stuff we take in normally through our senses and kind of process that way. And then we have this other layer in which everything is like, here's our normal reality, and then here's the synesthesia reality. And it's huge and expansive, and it just goes and it goes and it goes. So that everything feels brighter, everything for better or worse is louder or clearer, richer, more textured. And so this is a very, very powerful and I feel privileged way to live, despite some of the burdens that come with it, despite some of the challenges that come with it. Psychologically, I do find myself being a little aloof and detached at times. And that's a coping mechanism I've come to realize, where I'm trying to adjust myself to be able to ride out the sensory wave, which may or may not be overloading at any given moment in time. So especially in groups of people where there's a lot of sound, there might be many conversations going on and a lot of body language and a lot of energy moving between people and between groups of people. That's very difficult for me. I'm not much of a party goer for that reason, and I don't tend to socialize in large crowded places often because of that. So in those kinds of situations, I'm very cool. I'm very detached. And when people speak to me, it's going to look and feel a certain way. I might not seem very warm or friendly initially, though I try to be. I make an effort to try not to have that shield there. If someone kind of bounces in on me like Tigger and is all loud and exuberant, which is the way my daughter is, so she's a good foil for me. In fact, her nickname is Boom for that reason. There's nothing quiet about that girl or subtle. She's loud and beautiful and like right in your face. And it's like, hi, and I love you, which is beautiful, but I'm also like, too much. Put the brakes on. So, if people are like that in public or in a social scene, I have a really hard time, and I struggle, and I'm kind of like, you just bombarded me with the whole of your energy, and the color of you and the sound of you is freaking me out. I won't say that, usually, but that's there, and I'm trying not to do the freak out outwardly. I'm trying to contain it and be like, this is okay, this is cool, I can deal with this. So what I've learned to do is kind of this breathing exercise, this counting and breathing exercise, which I've heard certain people who have certain social anxieties have implemented, and so it makes me feel good that I'm doing something right. It certainly works for me. But if someone's bombarding me like that and with their exuberance, I count. And I breathe, and I count, and I breathe. And I'll try to be conscious of like kind of smiling and nodding and allowing myself to do a miniature version of what it is that I do to prepare myself for the day in the moment with them, like still doing their thing, bouncing and happy and loud and friendly. And I'm beginning to cope, like and emerge with them so that I can actually relate with them. So that has done wonders for me since I've taken that up. And what it ends up happening is this fascinating sort of kaleidoscopic experience of other people when I do that, because I'm relaxed and it's like my vision starts to soften. And then I am able to see them through the lens of the synesthesia And it ends up being very beautiful. I really wish that I had like an instant camera lens on my eye. You know, I mean, I've got it in my mind, but I wish that I was able to capture what it is that I see. Because if they were to see what I see when I'm in that space, I think they'd be blown away. It's absolutely beautiful. And I do try at times to capture that when I paint. The portraits that I do end up being kind of created through that lens, as much as I am capable of it, with the level of discipline and skill that I have artistically. And I'm always striving to improve that. So yeah, as an artistic tool, it's powerful to be synesthetic. Socially, personally, interpersonally, it is what it is. Now, the other piece of this is, I believe that because I'm a metaphysical sort of person, I believe that our development of these various syndromes, these various ways of experiencing our humanity in the world, that these are evolutionary things. I believe that this is a way for us as a species to evolve our bodies, to accept and contain and express more fully a higher vibration of being. I'm not the only one who thinks this way. There are lots of people who've come forward with this sort of thesis, this concept, and are doing tremendous amounts of very beautiful, positive work with it. That's great. From my own experience of self and being someone who has aspired to a spiritual path of service and realization and healing, I can say firsthand that what I witness about myself in that process is that there's a cascade of events that took place that either caused or facilitated the manifestation of the synesthesia. It's a relatively unknown at this point in time how much of it is genetic, how much of it is environmental, and how much of it is adaptive. That's true of synesthesia as well as other related things, such as those sets of symptoms and experiences that we would label as being on the autism spectrum. Also, the development of certain diseases such as Alzheimer's and lupus and fibromyalgia, and these things that we haven't quite managed to find categories for that make complete sense because we're ignoring the spiritual and the metaphysical. That's a tangent. So bringing us back, I was a preemie. I lived in an incubator for several months with limited physical contact and a tremendous amount of isolation, and literally a container for the senses. So my physical body as a container, and then the incubator as a container. I believe that that set of experiences, one, not having a finished body, a finished vessel for the spirit, two, being incubated and isolated for a period of time, when normally that is the critical threshold of bonding and nurturing and settling into the body as an infant, as a newborn infant. And then the lessons of having to emerge, which must have been experienced as a series of triumphs and traumas. Much more so than even a normal infancy, which is challenging and traumatic enough and carries its certain triumphs as each stage is achieved. But that overwhelm and that sense of chaos of the outside world and of other people, magnified, tremendously magnified due to those experiences. And then in childhood, being very much left to my own devices as far as navigating that, purely because what I was experiencing wasn't something I could articulate to others, and it was outside the realm of their experience. And most people had no idea of how it is that I was experiencing the world. So no context for that greater wave of positioning oneself in the world according to the individual reality, construct of reality. And having to translate it for myself and make sense of it for myself. So that came through my relationship to the natural world, which is abundantly rewarding. And through the creative process. Once I was able to read and write and draw, and the whole creative process was catalyzed for me, that opened a door through which the synesthesia was made instrumental in expressing myself as a whole being. So that map of my personal landscape became like those who are savants, autistic savants, who have one or a few outrageously tremendous gifts of creation or mental capacity, and I would also include heart expression. Because there are those who don't really do or say much. They might be uncommunicative outwardly, but the presence that they radiate is so incredibly full of heart that I would say these are pure bodhisattvas in the world. And those are the beings who kind of fall in the clinical labeling of having a disorder, who, there's no disorder here, there's nothing wrong here, this is as it should be. And their way of being in the world, if it's challenging to us because we don't understand and we don't know how to be in relationship to those beings, that's our problem. And we better get on board and learn very quickly that they're here to teach us. So I would definitely say with confidence that these are evolutionary developments. And they are not diseases, and they are not disorders, and they shouldn't be treated as if they're a pathology that needs to be fixed and remedied. I also believe that it is possible to open the door of this way of experiencing for others who don't experience it naturally and organically on their own. I believe that given enough clarity and given enough willingness to receive the right way to relate it, that I could open up those abilities in someone else. That if you aren't naturally synesthetic, that I could help you arrive at a place where you could open the door and you would experience the world through those channels. And I believe it's simply a matter of dropping what it is we think we know about how we experience the world, loosening the need to have it be so certain and concrete, that this stuff that I'm touching is the only reality. Or this that I think in my mind is the only reality. Or this that I've been told, which is the construct of reality, is the only reality. I think if we get rid of that, if we come to willingness to suspend all of that and drop it, that we open more possibility for what could be real and what could be true. So what would it be like for someone who's never experienced the world through that kind of lens to do so? I've had a very good friend of mine who I've known from earliest childhood ask these questions, mainly out of curiosity about what it is to be in my skin and wondering what's possible. He's someone who over the years has experimented a little bit with recreational drugs and alcohol, and kind of pushed the threshold a little bit of opening those doors of perception. A little bit of a Jim Morrison thing going on there. But he's also increasingly spiritually inquiring. So he comes to me because he knows this is my bag. And he's like, okay, show me what this is. I want to know. Show me what it is that you feel and experience and how it is that you are walking around being so trippy, and then, painting the way that you do and living the way that you do and doing the things that you do. What's that voodoo that you do? So, which we laugh about. That's kind of funny. So we've spent some time both indoors in a kind of sheltered, safe place, kind of like having a padded room almost, metaphorically speaking, to create a space for him to explore that. And I would lead him in through guided meditation to peeling away layers of resistance, and then kind of just sitting still for a little bit in one sense. For instance, just choose hearing. So to presence himself in his ears so that he's only hearing and kind of shutting down his vision and kind of numbing a sense of taste and, keeping his hands wide open so that the touch and the tactile input is less and less. And by focusing on one sense, it becomes magnified and heightened. And then in the next few sessions, times that we sat together doing this in a very safe interior space, I would incorporate another sense through the guided meditation, suggesting bringing in vision or bringing in another sense. So just two are sort of resonating together. And then to see, is there overlap? And to make suggestions about, putting something in his hand that has putting objects in his hand that would have different textures or temperatures or, different kind of substances. So, solids and liquids and, exploring all of that to see what else would develop, what else would open up in his way of translating the world through his senses. And that's really the bottom line. How is it that we are translating the world through our senses? This is what I believe is changing and transforming for us as human beings as we evolve. And that our way of experiencing and then translating is going to become that much more rich and diverse, increasingly so, because our very physical vehicles are also evolving. Our physical vehicles have to be able to contain our increased spiritual vibration and then interact with the world in new ways. And that's a topic for a whole other video. But coming back to my friend and his experiences and the sort of experiment of our work together, and play. I mean, this is a lot of fun. We've known each other our whole lives. So this is, it's a great playful experiment in seeing what's possible with someone who's led a pretty, from a sensory point of view, a very sheltered life. Just kind of, this is what's real, dude. If I can hold it and taste it and see it, that's good enough. And now it's not good enough. And so his desire to push that envelope and see what is possible so that life becomes much more fulfilling and rewarding for him, as well as probably a heck of a lot more fun, he's willing to try. And I'm game for trying because I am investing a lot of energy in the belief that this is possible, that it's not something you have to be born with. It's not just a matter of fate rolling the dice and you've got it and that one doesn't, for better or worse. That the work is to allow everybody to catch up and take hold of these qualities and integrate them into our livingness, and that there is a purpose for it. So I'm working with that whole premise and working with him, and we're having a blast. What he's found is that his hidden, but I believe innate synesthesia, because I think we all have it. It's just buried. It's like a recessive trait that we've inherited, but it may not show up ever. If it does show up, it might be later in life, or it may pop up surprisingly in moments of great need. His experiences are becoming quite consistent. Happily, surprisingly so. He has found that his sense of taste has been heightened, which is mainly a good thing, sometimes not a good thing, depending on whatever it is he might be tasting. His sense of touch has become heightened. His sense of sight is beginning to merge with his sense of touch in a very unusual way. And, oh, excuse me. What he's describing to me is that when he touches something, he's beginning to see a kind of patterning. He explains it as almost like a grid, like a geometric grid. Now, what I will say about this is that what I know about his mind is that even though he doesn't choose to pursue this, he is very mathematically gifted. But he didn't like school, he doesn't like academia, he doesn't like to study. And so he confines his mathematical skill and intuition to puzzles and games and graphic design, like computer graphics, mainly for his own entertainment. Though I think he could probably do it as a livelihood and be very good at it. I'm trying to encourage that. Maybe this door opening will be very good for him. I might encourage him to do that. So he's beginning to see a kind of patterning overlaid on objects when he touches them. That's probably the trippiest thing that he's experiencing, the most surreal sort of thing that he's experiencing. I think that's awesome. I've never heard of that before. That's really awesome. He is experiencing colors with tastes, which I can relate to. And that's very trippy. he's learning that there can be dissonance and friction that arises when a color doesn't match up with the taste or the perceived taste or the known expected taste of something. And he's like, I've stopped being able to eat certain things. And I'm like, yeah, I know that one. There have been a few things that I've had to drop from my diet because they're not harmonious. The senses don't overlap in a way that creates harmony, so you just have to do away with it. So I'm very excited about what's developing with him, and I'm looking forward to playing some more and experimenting some more if he's up for it. Though he's kind of at a place now where he's feeling a little saturated and a little overloaded, and he wants to let all this settle for a while. So I think we're going to do that. What it leads me to be inspired about and aspire to is I'd like to be able to create a series of kind of sessions or workshops or something like, a class in which people can drop into these sort of guided meditations and explore their senses in a safe environment, holding the intention to see what is possible in developing those new skills of translation, inviting the richer language of the senses through the synesthesia, activating it, and then learning the language of it well enough to translate it practically and usefully in our lives. For me, as a visual artist, as I said, I'm tremendously blessed. As someone who is a spiritual advisor and personal counselor, it's tremendously valuable in my work with people on the spiritual plane as well as psychologically and emotionally, because I see patterns that I wouldn't otherwise, and I'm able to translate their needs more fully. There are more layers that present themselves, and that allows me then to offer guidance and counsel and assistance that wouldn't come otherwise. For instance, the ability to be sensitive enough to someone's physical body, to kind of scan it and read it like much better than a medical chart, because of my spiritual openness, but also my discipline of various practices, Chinese medicine, and a kind of emotional alchemical work that I've done for years. And then the synesthesia, all of those things come together and they create a very powerful room in which I can sit in presence with somebody and get a very full scan of their being, and then offer back to them this like blueprint of their being on all those levels: mental, emotional, psychological, physical, and the inner spiritual impulse that's driving it all. So there it has become an invaluable tool in what I would refer to as my ministry, which is emerging as a spiritual servant. That is all work that is focused upon healing the natural world, the planet, as well as our own humanity in relation to the natural world and the planet, our symbiotic, sympathetic relationship. How is it that we honor that, and how is it that we embrace our mutual purpose in healing and growing and evolving? So in the context of that work, the synesthesia allows me a way to, just as I did as a child, experience the natural world through a variety of lenses that make me value it that much more. And it stops becoming an it, the thingliness of nature and of the other creatures in the world, Earth's other children. They stop being objects, and I have to relate to them as living sentient beings. And I have to relate to the earth itself as herself. I very much embrace the beingness of the planet as a person, as her, as our mother, as Gaia, as a divine being. And I have to, I'm compelled to, because of this way of experiencing the world and being experienced through both receiving and expressing through my senses. So I believe from that perspective in the value of teaching others that there are other ways to experience the world. Spreading the message. I don't like the word preach, preaching, but in essence, preaching the message that there is a reason to do so, to embrace this greater, more expansive way of being. And living, being a living message, expressing through my livingness and my daily life, and my relationships, and my pastimes, and my labors. The purpose of that, and the personal reward of that, the expanded bliss of living in that way, and choosing to constantly say yes, no matter the challenges that I might face, no matter the difficulties sometimes of remaining an integrated being when one feels overwhelmed and that you want to shut it off. Shutting it off stops becoming an option because not only is my own experience of livingness too good to do it any other way, but the potential and the promise of opening that up for others and witnessing, hopefully in my lifetime, a humanity in which this is our livingness, our shared experience of our new humanity. Because of that, turning it off is not an option. So I express immense gratitude for the blessing of having been born with a condition that at this moment in time sets me apart from others and creates a certain amount of challenge in my life. I love, and I'm in love with, this way of experiencing life. And I'm grateful to have a medium through which to share this with other people, such as these videos and YouTube. And I am tremendously grateful for those people in my life, such as my old friend, who are curious enough to ask questions they wouldn't otherwise, and open to experiences they wouldn't otherwise. That we are on this big faith walk together is a beautiful thing. So I want to express my gratitude for those who take the time to listen and think and consider and perhaps open those doors for themselves and walk through. So definitely comments are encouraged, and questions and dialogue. If there are other people who end up watching this video who are also synesthetes, I would love to hear what your experiences are, metaphysical or otherwise. It's fascinating to me, and I love hearing the stories of what your particular textures are. So thank you again for this time. And please do leave comments. Please do like, please do subscribe. And please share if you feel like this is something valuable. And I'm looking forward to our next time together, where who knows what I'll pull out of the hat. So thank you, and namaste.